In small towns, everyone knows everyone. Secrets don't stay buried for long, until one night changes everything. In the early hours of July 16, 2010, the quiet Argentine town of Pico Truncado woke up to a nightmare. The lifeless body of 20-year-old Johanna Casus, model, beauty queen, and beloved twin sister, was found in an isolated field. She had been shot at close range. What should have been a straightforward murder investigation quickly spiraled into one of Argentina's most disturbing and controversial criminal cases. 2 men, 2 love stories, 2 trials, and shockingly, 2 convictions for the same murder. At the center of it all were obsession, jealousy, and a twisted emotional triangle involving Johanna, her twin sister Edith, and a man who would later marry one of them after being convicted for killing the other. This is not just a story about a murder, it's a story about toxic love, broken justice, family betrayal, and a case that still divides public opinion more than a decade later. Tonight, we unravel the full story of Johanna Casus and the truth that may never fully come to light. Pico Truncado is the kind of place where nothing ever seems to happen. A small oil town in northern Patagonia, surrounded by flat land and harsh winds, where families know each other by name and routines rarely change. It was here, in the early hours of July 16, 2010, that a crime shattered the illusion of safety and left a community divided for years to come. The victim was Johanna Casus, a 20-year-old model, former beauty queen, and one half of a pair of identical twins who were inseparable from birth. When her body was discovered in an isolated area known locally as the Forest Belt, roughly 3 miles from town, the shock rippled far beyond Pico Truncado. Johanna had been shot twice at close range. 1 bullet pierced her heart. There was no doubt, this was murder. But what no one could have imagined at that moment was how deeply tangled the case would become, how love, jealousy, family loyalty, and flawed investigations would collide, producing one of Argentina's most controversial criminal cases. A life shared between 2. Johanna was born on July 19, 1990, just 15 minutes before her identical twin sister Edith. Their resemblance was uncanny. Same face, same build, same voice. So similar that even their own mother, Marcelina, sometimes confused them as infants. To honor that bond, the younger twin was named Edith Johanna, forever linking their identities. Their father, Valentine Casus, was a police officer. Though he eventually separated from Marcelina, he remained a constant presence in his daughters' lives. The twins grew up close, not just emotionally but intuitively. Edith later said they could sense when something was wrong with the other. When Edith was once hospitalized and slipped into a coma after an accident, Johanna, miles away, insisted she felt her sister calling out to her. As they grew older, their personalities diverged. Edith was quiet, introspective, and reserved. Johanna was vibrant, social, and drawn to fashion, makeup, and attention. That energy carried her beyond Pico Truncado. She walked runways, modeled in nearby cities, and eventually won a local beauty title, earning admiration and, inevitably, envy. In a town where everyone watches everyone else, Johanna stood out. Victor Singalani enters the picture. In mid-2006, when Johanna was just 15 years old, she met Victor Singalani. He was 21 at the time, already known in Pico Truncado as charming, confident, and dangerous in subtle ways. They met at a local bingo hall, where Johanna was with her father and brother. Victor was there with his mother and a friend. According to Victor, Johanna made the first move, approaching him with a handwritten note bearing her name and phone number. What followed was a fast-moving relationship. Despite the age gap, Johanna's mother allowed it, believing it was better to know where her daughter was than leave her vulnerable elsewhere. But cracks appeared quickly. Victor was jealous, possessive, aggressive. Johanna's parents later described incidents where arguments escalated into violence. In one episode, Victor tried to strike Johanna and instead smashed a window, injuring his own hand. The relationship lasted about 1.5 years, long enough to leave emotional damage behind. When Johanna finally ended things, the situation took a turn no one could have predicted. Victor began dating Edith, crossing an invisible line. Victor later insisted he was never involved with both sisters at the same time. At first, it seemed plausible. Edith had been dating someone else while Victor was with Johanna. The 4 of them even socialized together on occasion. But emotions don't follow clean timelines. Victor was drawn to Edith's calm nature. Where Johanna was expressive and independent, Edith was quiet and grounding. Eventually, Victor confessed his feelings to Edith, but only after telling her to speak with Johanna first. Johanna gave her blessing. She told Edith they were adults, capable of making their own choices. But the bond between the twins changed forever after that moment. Friends drifted away, social circles split, and a silent tension settled between the sisters. Victor and Edith's relationship didn't last either. They broke up, and Victor moved on, only to circle back into Johanna's life 2 years later. By then, Johanna was dating someone else. She ended that relationship to give Victor another chance. This reunion lasted just 2 months. Johanna wanted children. Victor didn't. That difference ended things permanently, or so it seemed. Marcos Díaz, the final relationship. Soon after, Johanna began dating Marcos Díaz, a man who immediately raised red flags with her family. The Díaz family carried dark rumors, including allegations that one of Marcos's brothers had killed his own child. Marcos himself had a reputation for violence, jealousy, and control. He monitored Johanna constantly, flooded her phone with messages, refused to let her go out alone. Despite her parents' objections, Johanna moved in with him after just 6 months. At the same time, Victor re-entered Edith's life once again, confessing he had never stopped thinking about her. The emotional triangle that had been quietly forming for years was now fully exposed. 2 sisters, 2 men, too much history. The last night. On July 15, 2010, just days before the twins' 20th birthday, Johanna went out with Marcos. Witnesses later said the couple argued throughout the night. They left the party together around 3 a.m. That was the last time Johanna Casus was seen alive. Early the next morning, a local man walking his dog discovered her body in an open field. News spread rapidly through Pico Truncado. Within hours, police detained both Victor and Marcos as primary suspects. Investigators believed the murder may have been planned, theorizing that Johanna wanted to leave Marcos, and that jealousy, combined with past emotional wounds, had turned lethal. But evidence was thin. Marcos was released a week later due to lack of proof, despite being the last person seen with Johanna. Victor, however, remained behind bars. The case was already unraveling, and it was only just beginning. From the moment Johanna Casus was laid to rest, the town of Pico Truncado split into quiet factions. Some believed justice would be swift and obvious. Others sensed that something about the investigation felt rushed, unstable, and dangerously flawed. As the weeks passed, one thing became clear. This case was no longer just about who killed Johanna. It was about how badly the truth could be bent in the search for closure. While Marcos Díaz remained free after his initial release, Victor Singalani stayed in custody. Police framed him as obsessive, manipulative, and unable to accept rejection, especially when it involved both twins. The narrative was simple and emotionally compelling. Too simple. Victor maintained his innocence from the beginning. He told investigators that, on the night of the murder, he had been at the casino and later at a friend's house until early morning. But his alibi could not be firmly confirmed, and in a case built largely on circumstantial evidence, that uncertainty was enough to keep him behind bars. 2 years later, in mid-2012, Victor went on trial for Johanna's murder, the evidence that should have been questioned. The prosecution relied on 3 main pillars. First was a paraffin test conducted on Victor's hands shortly after his arrest. The test allegedly detected gunshot residue, which prosecutors argued placed a weapon in his hand. But experts later pointed out that paraffin tests were already considered outdated and unreliable at the time. Even more troubling, the test had been administered without proper forensic controls. The officer conducting it wore no gloves, potentially contaminating the sample, and at one point even used his teeth to cut the adhesive tape meant to collect residue. Second were tracking dogs, one of which reportedly led handlers to the crime scene and indicated Victor's presence. 2 other dogs, however, showed no such result. No independent witnesses documented the procedure, and the defense emphasized that human scent can linger for weeks, meaning the result proved nothing about when Victor may have been there. Third was Victor's collapsing alibi. He could not definitively place himself elsewhere at the exact moment Johanna was killed. None of this directly proved guilt, but combined, it was enough to convince a jury. The testimony that changed everything. The most devastating testimony came not from police or experts, but from Edith, Johanna's identical twin. She attended every day of the trial wearing a shirt demanding justice for her sister. On the stand, she described Victor as abusive, controlling, and psychologically manipulative. She accused him of violence toward both her and Johanna. Then she went further. She told the court she believed Victor was capable of killing her twin. The courtroom was silent. For the jury, it was decisive. On June 27, 2012, Victor Singalani was convicted of simple homicide and sentenced to 13 years in prison. The town believed the story was over. It wasn't. The unthinkable reversal. Months after the verdict, something happened that no one could explain. at least not at first. Edith announced that she had resumed a relationship with Victor, the same man convicted of murdering her twin sister. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Her parents were devastated. Her mother, Marcelina, publicly stated that it felt like she had lost both daughters, one to death, the other to denial. The family severed contact. Edith moved in with Victor's sister and became increasingly isolated from her own relatives. When questioned, Edith made a shocking claim. She said her trial testimony had been pressured by her parents. She now believed Victor was innocent. According to her, the real killer had always been Marcos Díaz. And just as that belief took hold, the case took another dramatic turn. Marcos Díaz on trial. In 2013, Marcos Díaz finally stood trial. This time, the evidence was stronger. DNA from a cigarette butt and a music CD found near Johanna's body matched Marcos. Witnesses described his violent, controlling behavior, his sudden disappearance after the murder, and the fact that he stopped texting Johanna immediately after her estimated time of death painted a damning picture. Even the prosecution shifted its stance. Now they argued that Marcos acted alone. On July 2, 2013, Marcos Díaz was convicted and sentenced to 12 years in prison for Johanna's murder. 2 men, 2 convictions, 1 victim. The legal contradiction was impossible to ignore. A case collapses. Victor's lawyers immediately appealed. If Marcos had been convicted as the sole perpetrator, Victor's conviction could not stand. The higher court agreed. On December 5, 2013, Victor Singalani was released due to insufficient evidence. No compensation followed. No apology. Just freedom, after years lost to a crime the courts now admitted they could not prove he committed. Over time, even Johanna's mother began to reconsider. Quietly, painfully, she accepted that Victor may not have been involved in her daughter's death after all. The marriage between Victor and Edith eventually ended years later. Both rebuilt their lives separately. The town moved on. But the questions never fully disappeared. Was Victor a victim of a broken system desperate for answers? Was justice delayed, distorted, or simply misdirected? And how much damage does a flawed investigation cause, not just to suspects, but to families, truth, and memory? Johanna Casus became more than a victim. She became the center of one of Argentina's most unsettling legal paradoxes, a case where truth and verdict never quite aligned. If this case made you stop and think, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe justice was ultimately served, or did the system fail everyone involved? If you want more deeply researched crime stories like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We post new cases regularly, and each one asks a question that deserves to be heard.